Welcome, everyone, to the podcast Adopting Best Practices. My name is Sherry Anderson, Optimization Specialist here at Rhinogram. Joining me today is Dr. George Souris, an orthodontist from Ohio that searches for, finds, and uses the best ways to meet his practice goals and objectives, all while keeping a patient-centered practice. So let's go ahead and dive in. Best practices is a method or a technique that has been generally accepted as correct and superior to any alternatives because it produces high quality results. It helps providers stay current on evidence-based protocols. So Dr. Souris, please share with us some important points to consider when adopting best practices.
Thank you, Sherry, and thanks for having me here today. Definitely one of the first things you have to do, and probably the most important thing, is have a clear mission, vision, and strategy. You have to really commit to incorporating Rhinogram 100%, not 60, 70, 80, but 100%. And of course, just as important, you have to lead by example. You have to be a strong leader. You have to have goals as a leader and support them as a leader. And really, in the process of doing that, you really should develop a best practices manual, which kind of dictates where their staff are going and what they're doing and how to get there. But again, being the leader, you have to stand behind it 100%. Also, you definitely have to have open communication with your staff, be clear on the culture that you want in your practice, and complete integration of the changes have to happen. So you've got to set the culture and make a complete integration of the changes, not a partial change. You want to set forth clear expectations, obviously, and make sure everyone's aligned with the goals and the achievements that the practice wants to reach. Of course, in doing that, you've got to set up some policies and procedures. Obviously, you can put it all in writing, but after you've done that, you've got to provide the training and the development, and most importantly, the support to all the new policies you're integrating to incorporate the Rhinogram into your practice. So again, it's the commitment that's just as important as the policy itself. And in doing this, which I've done, you want to examine every aspect of your business and how Rhinogram can improve it. From payment to communication to treatment, you've got to look at it all and incorporate as much of the texting into that system so that it can streamline your practice, make it more efficient, and make it better. You've got to obviously keep up to date with the way successful businesses operate to help you design how to incorporate the Rhinogram into your practice. And of course, you've got to learn from others. And when I mean others, I don't just mean peers. I also mean friends and family. Ask them about ideas. Ask them what they think. I've often asked friends and family, what do you think about this idea? Oh, as a patient, I would like that. So use all your resources to learn what might work and what might not work in your practice and in your area. And of course, you got to measure your ways in comparisons to others in your field. You've got to always track what you're doing and understand how it compares to other people in your area.
Well, Dr. Souris, does adopting best practices happen overnight?
Sherry, absolutely not. It is not overnight. It's not a ways down the road either, but what happens overnight is it will impact your practice to the point where you'll realize how important it is to make the change. But the complete changes will happen over time. So obviously, you want to start with small changes. Obviously, you want to be using your existing patients for surveys and reviews and feedback and find out how they feel about the changes you're making. But as you make these changes, you're going to see how they're going to improve the functionality of your practice and the communication of your practice. You want to look at the clinical side of things, how to manage emergencies using texting and selfies. How can you improve that? We've probably decreased our emergency visits by 80% using Rhinogram with the selfies. You want to educate on the protocol and focus on patient-centered practice using communication that the patients want, which is obviously texting. And of course, you want to use evidence-based treatment and infection control, but use your Rhinogram to support those concepts. In other words, how can the texting let me accomplish all my goals clinically and improve my efficiency? A marketing team, very important. You want to drive new business using texting and one-visit consultations. We've been able to get people to come on board with us because word gets around that, hey, this guy takes care of everything up front and he limits my visits. And especially in a time like this where people want less contact and less visits, a texting can minimize the visits and increase one-visit consultations to get people into your practice. Obviously, you can do promotional things within your practice. I'm not even going to get into that. Everybody has their own ideas about that. But within promoting your practice, promote the fact that you are a texting office and this is how you communicate. The sentence that I use with every new patient that walks in my door is, we are 100% texting practice. The phone is secondary to us. It is an option that we look at as a second choice. And again, when you promote things in your practice, promote that this is how you want to run your practice. And believe me, people will jump on board. Um, Monitor what other organizations are doing. Look around you. If they're not doing that and you are, it makes you stand out like a sore thumb. It really does. And of course, in doing all this, make sure that you're still keeping up with the industry standard of orthodontics. Make sure the quality care that you're producing is still the same. So don't jeopardize anything you want to accomplish, but find a way to incorporate the Rhinogram into that system. And believe me, it will make you more efficient and more effective. You want to obviously add new equipment to your practice as well. Modernize communication, obviously texting and virtual consultations. If you don't have the system in place to incorporate the Rhinogram and the other virtual consultation type of information, you need to do that. So modernize your communication equipment and equipment in the office that will allow you to communicate with people in the way they want to be communicated with. Trust me, I've never had one patient tell me, oh, no, that's okay. I'll just go back and call you. I'll use the phone instead. Never had that happen. Really haven't. It's been amazing, the response by people. They're very excited to have that texting option on board. Why is it beneficial to the practice? Well, we can go on and on all day. But number one, saves you valuable time. Number one, no phone tag. You can spend an entire day playing phone tag with a patient. They get frustrated, you get frustrated, and you accomplish nothing. We accomplish things with every text communication. Each text communication accomplishes more, and before you know it, the problem's solved within 5 minutes. So the staff are definitely more efficient and more effective with texting versus phone calling. Multitasking is so easy when you're texting. You're dealing with text and you're dealing with something else at the same time that you're texting. So I see that my staff's multitasking skills have improved drastically with texting. And of course, it's very patient-centered. Texting is what the patients want. So not only are you improving your efficiency, your communication, and you're making your staff multitask, you're also doing what the patients want. So it's a win-win for everybody. And of course, in the process with Rhinogram, you're keeping in compliance with HIPAA, and you're providing real-time communication for your patients and consumers that may be shopping around. So you want to be the first to get that person interested in braces, interested in Invisalign, whatever it might be. And it begins with the one-start approach to treatment. We are currently now to the point where we are starting over 90% of our patients with one visit, because all the communication has happened up front with texting and selfies. So again, you don't want them going down the street or farther down the street or even farther down the street looking for other options. If you do what they want up front and they've heard about you, they'll stay with you. Services, of course, you want to add new procedures and new options for your patients. But in the process of doing that, you want to make sure that you are meeting the patient's needs and wants. In other words, in these challenging times, people want minimal contact, less visits to the office. And believe me, if you do incorporate the Rhinogram to its maximum efficiency in every aspect, it will reduce your visits. Again, we've reduced our extracurricular visits by probably 80% by using the selfies and the Rhinogram. And what I'd like to do is take a few moments to kind of review how we're handling our patients during this COVID-19 protocol and kind of give you a step-by-step approach of what we're doing. Number one, the patient shows up in the parking lot and texts us. Once they text us, we let them know when we are prepared for them to come up. After they come up to the office, we have somebody waiting to greet them at the door. And oftentimes if they goof and they forget and they walk up, we have the door locked between patients, and they will text us from outside the door. So even in a situation where it's not ideal, they're still texting us to let us know they're there. We'll let them in, do all our protocol, the temperature check, the hand sanitizing and everything, and then they're led to the chair. Obviously the treatment happens, but the protocol afterwards is just as important. As they leave, to minimize contact and minimize a possibility of communication, unnecessary communication, they're basically escorted out the rear entrance, but more importantly, they're told the reception staff will contact you within 15 to 20 minutes to schedule your next appointment through text. So now they leave, they get a text as they're driving, and they deal with the text, and now they schedule their next appointment. So literally, we are getting people in, checked in, treated, out, and scheduled with literally no parent communication, literally. which is fantastic. What's even been more valuable, and this is new. So if you're asked whether to take it, because I know that they were using it with Dr. Souris to see how he likes it. Now, Rhinoblast is fantastic. What we do is we have been rhinoblasting each day's patients with the protocol ahead of time, with the questions ahead of time. So all this stuff, they're aware of what they need to do before they even get near my office through the rhinoblast. So we've been rhinoblasting people for their appointments, and we're probably going to continue to do that for several months until they get the idea. This is how we operate. Now, communicating to get them prepared for their trip to your office is just as important as when they're there, because if they have no idea what's going to happen, it becomes a disaster. So the rhinoblast has allowed us to mass communicate with each day's patients and let them know, here's our COVID-19 protocol for the office. And the last thing, which is minimized communication, I'm sorry, not communication, but minimized contact with the patients, is texting forms and other necessary information. We've been doing as much texting of forms, information, and anything we can to minimize what they need to do in the office. So again, I take a step back and I ask you, how would all this be accomplished without Rhinogram and texting service in the office? It's literally, I don't understand how with a phone call you'd even be able to accomplish half of what I'm talking about right here. So at this point, I feel that it's really made our return back from the COVID-19 shutdown really, really, really smooth and comfortable for us.
That's fantastic, Dr. Souris. Let me ask you this. Why must a provider adopt best practices in an office?
Well, obviously implementing best practices can help your practice in a lot of ways. It will definitely improve the quality of your patient care. And let me tell you why. Virtual consultations and patient screening for emergencies to avoid unnecessary visits, it's perceived, whether you actually feel like it's doing better for the patients, they perceive it as better care. So my patients love that they're not making unnecessary visits to the office, love that if their second child might need braces, they can send me some selfies and I can say, yes, definitely, let's get this child going. He definitely needs work. See, these are all perceived by the patient as, oh my gosh, they're accomplishing so much and I'm keeping my contact there to a minimum, which is what everybody wants right now. But it really creates better and more efficient communication with new and existing patients, and it leads to a quicker um, treatment with less visits, pretty much. So in doing all that, of course, I just mentioned quicker, less visits, less staff time. Obviously, you're increasing revenue and reducing costs by decreasing overhead. There's less office visits, increased staff efficiency. So not only are you making the patients happy, you're making your bottom line happy at the same time. Just as important, it keeps you on the cutting edge. We cannot brag and boast about how we feel like we are the cutting edge office in the area with all our technology as well as our texting service. So it makes you stand out amongst your competitors, and patients love the ease and quickness of communicating with your office. Believe me, they will love it. You're becoming more competitive by leading the field in communication and technology. So it leads to, so both my staff and I feel like we're more efficient and effective, and it's leading to increased production, decreased stress, and increased patient satisfaction.
Okay, so adopting best practices keep patients coming through the door, both physically and virtually, and the processes are so much smoother. But it all begins with leadership, correct?
Absolutely, Sherry. The number one most important thing, leadership and commitment. You got to be the leader in your office. You have to have a mutual respect throughout the office, but you have to communicate your goals and desires and basically let the staff know this is where we're going. This isn't maybe we're going. This is where we're going. And you need to know everyone's job functions in the office and stress that what changes are necessary to make the transition. If you want to put them in paper, you can. If you want to create a manual, you can. But the important thing is not to just set it up, but to stand behind it and support it 100%. Obviously, in these times where we're seeing less patients, we also want to be a lean organization because we're not able to see as many patients with our new protocol. So you got to look at the costs. Can I consolidate the tools to run my business? Well, yes, the example is absolutely yes, especially when you're using Rhinogram. The Rhinogram allows you to communicate not only with patients, but amongst your staff. So you've got 4 channels of communication routed into one secure inbox. You've got HIPAA consent management. You've got internal team communication. You've got RhinoPay to help people pay if they want to pay that way. You've got virtual care and videos to minimize the need for staff and visits. You've got software integration, appointment reminders. It's endless, but all these things definitely help your bottom line, which, to be honest with you, at this point, you got to want to pay attention to that too, because we're to a point now where we're just not able to see the volume we were before with the new way we're handling our patients. So it's the timing of this couldn't be better, to be honest with you, incorporating this type of system into your practice.
So patients are returning post-pandemic and going to need reassurance, especially when it comes to safety. And they're going to challenge you, so be prepared to offer high quality care in a safe environment. Consumers do expect it, and if you don't, they're going to look to a provider who does. So adopt best practices, have policies and procedures in place for administrative and clinical areas of your practice, and include infection control, virtual care options, and modernized communication. And be able to support a conversation on your evidence-based decisions that justify your processes, procedures, and recommendations. Dr. Souris, thank you for joining me today and providing such valuable information. But in closing, please share a few final words of wisdom regarding adopting best practices.
Thanks again, Sherry, for having me. I enjoyed it. And yes, I'd like to take a minute to kind of summarize my thoughts on this whole process. Basically, to put it all into one little paragraph, you definitely have to create a game plan to incorporate Rhinogram into your office. And you've really got to analyze how it can positively impact every aspect of your practice and set goals to achieve during those changes. You've got to commit to the changes 100%, monitor your results, and modify your changes accordingly. That kind of puts it all in one little paragraph. I'm going to end by saying Rhinogram has revolutionized our practice, and I think it can yours as well. So make the change and don't look back.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. And if you have any questions regarding Rhinogram's telehealth platform, email Sherry, Sherrie, at rhinogram.com. And our next podcast is titled, Don't Let Your Strategies Get Stale.